Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. The Dollmaker of Briar Hollow. In the heart of the dense, twisted woods of Briar Hollow, where the fog clung to the ground like spectral fingers and the ancient trees whispered secrets withheld from the living, stood a forgotten house. A gaunt, jagged silhouette poised precariously on a hill that overlooked the town below. Long ago, it had been the home of Elias Thorne, the infamous Dollmaker. The tale of Elias was woven into the very fabric of Briar Hollow's history, a story stained with fear and fire. A century had passed since the villagers of Briar Hollow, gripped by terror and superstition, marched up that hill, torches in hand, and set Elias's home ablaze. They claimed it was the only way to end the curse of the Dollmaker. A curse they believed had gripped their town in a choking veil of misfortune and death. And yet, somehow, Elias's creations did not perish in the flames. The dolls, they kept coming back. On cold autumn evenings, when the wind gusted sharply through the narrow streets and curled leaves settled like restless ghosts on the cobblestones, the people of Briar Hollow discovered the dolls once again. They would appear silently on the doorsteps of the unlucky or the curious, each doll a grotesque facsimile of a child, or sometimes an eerie likeness of someone living in the town. Their glassy eyes, unnervingly lifelike, seemed to watch from the shadows, carrying an unspoken menace. It was Mira Kellogg, a young woman with a stubborn heart and a fascination for the macabre, who first dared to investigate. Mira was raised on the whispered legends and ghost stories that clung to the town like moss on stone walls. As a child, she had feared the dolls like everyone else, but now, as a historian and amateur folklorist, she sought to unearth the truth buried beneath layers of myth. Mira had returned to Briar Hollow that fall, drawn by the unnerving resurgence of the dolls. 3 appeared on her own doorstep in the space of a week, each one more disturbing than the last. One was a cracked porcelain girl with tangled black hair and a smile that was just a shade too wide. The second, a boy with button eyes sewn crudely from dark fabric, scentless but with an inexplicable metallic tang. The third, a miniature woman dressed in tattered lace, who seemed to blink when the candlelight flickered. No one else in the town would talk about them. Some claimed the dolls were harmless pranks, abandoned, while others whispered darker warnings. Old Mrs. Fenwick had once heard Elias speak of souls trapped in glass before he had vanished. The day the house burned was a day marked forever by screams and shadows, but the dolls were the quiet survivors, the lingering curse. Mira found herself standing before the crumbling ruins of Elias Thorne's home one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon. Beneath a charcoal sky streaked with cold stars, the charred timber and singed stones bore witness to the violent past. The ground was covered in ash, but scattered around were shards of porcelain and splinters of wood, fragments of dolls that once had cried, smiled, or stared. She crouched, picking up a delicately crafted doll's arm, its jointed fingers cold and unsettlingly lifelike. The craftsmanship was exquisite but carried a strange, unnatural quality, as if the doll was meant for more than play. The wind picked up sharply, rustling dead leaves and carrying a scent of burnt wood and, faintly, something coppery, like dried blood. Mira shivered and stood up, feeling eyes upon her. Not human eyes. Those of the dolls. They lurked in the shadows just beyond clear sight, a myriad of little sentinels watching. Returning home, Mira began poring over old town records, diaries, and whispered recollections. Elias Thorne was a recluse, shunned by the community for reasons murky with time. It was said he was a gifted artist of impossible skill, but his creations touched too close the boundaries between life and death. Some speculated Elias dabbled in dark arts, pacts and rituals to breathe life into wood and porcelain. One faded journal, found hidden beneath floorboards in a relative's cottage, revealed Elias's own words. His handwriting was spidery and frantic. Tonight, as the moon fades, the souls linger at the threshold. I bind them, these flickering shadows, within these forms. They will protect me from the cold void. They cry for release, but release will bring the darkness to all. The dolls must endure, as I endure. Myra's heart hammered. The souls, he spoke of, human souls, perhaps, entombed in the dolls? And if so, what became of the children of Briar Hollow all those years ago? Disappearances that had never been fully explained. Murmurs of children who wandered into the woods, never to return. That night, as a choking mist rolled in, Mira awoke to a scraping sound at her doorstep. Trembling, she peered out through her window. There, bathed in moonlight, was a doll, small, impossibly delicate, sitting upright on the doormat. Its eyes were closed, but a wet trail streaked down its pale cheek where a tear would have been. Against her better judgment, Mira opened the door and took the doll inside. The air grew unnaturally cold. The candle flickered wildly. She noticed immediately that the doll's dress was stained with something dark, something that whispered of rust and earth. Her skin prickled as the doll's eyes suddenly opened, revealing deep orbs that shimmered with a flicker of life. "Let me go," a fragile voice breathed from its tiny frame. Mira stumbled back in terror. The doll was speaking. The words were scarcely a whisper, yet heavy, laden with centuries of anguish. "The fire did not end us," it said. "Elias trapped us. We are bound forever. But the time is nearing." Shaken but driven by a grim need for answers, Mira sought the local church's crypt, where, according to legends, many of the missing children's bodies had been hastily buried in unmarked graves after the house burned. Ignoring the warnings of the pastor, she descended into the cold catacombs beneath the stone church. The air was thick with dust and decay. Old bones lay scattered in niches, and the smell of earth and mold overwhelmed her senses. In the faint glow of her flashlight, a grotesque sight emerged. Skeletal dolls twisted among the bones, faces cracked but eerily preserved. The dolls bore name tags, names matching those of the missing children. A sudden chill swept through the crypt. A whispering chorus echoed from the darkness, voices of the trapped souls crying through the porcelain faces. "Help us! Break the curse!" A surge of cold pain gripped Myra's head. Vision blurred and memories not her own surged through her mind. She saw Elias's face, pale and desperate as he carved each doll's face and whispered incantations in a forgotten tongue. He was no monster, she realized. It was fear and hatred that had destroyed him, but what he tried to protect had become a curse. 200 years ago, the village had been in the grip of a terrible plague, and children were dying in droves. Elias had tried to save the youngest, desperate to preserve their innocence and light, but what he wrought was unnatural. He trapped their spirits in the dolls, alive but imprisoned. Realizing she was the key to ending the torment, Mira gathered the dolls that had appeared and followed the crypt's cold passages deeper. At the heart of the catacombs lay an altar blackened by time. She placed the dolls upon it, their broken and beautiful faces turned upward. Chanting softly, guided by a feeling she could not explain, Mira recited words from the journal, an incantation of release, a prayer to undo the bindings Elias had forged. As the final words left her lips, a gust of wind exploded through the catacombs, snuffing her flashlight and scattering dust. The dolls trembled, their glassy eyes shining brighter until, one by one, they cracked and shattered into shimmering dust. The anguished whispering unified into a final, grateful sigh. Outside, the sun finally pierced the horizon, burning away the night and with it, the last trace of the curse. The townspeople would find their doorsteps empty the next morning, the sinister gifts gone forever. Mira stepped from the crypt into the dawn light, the cold mist retreating. The dolls were no more. The dollmaker's tragic legacy was finally laid to rest. But sometimes, deep in the woods of Briar Hollow, beneath the twisted boughs and reflected in a puddle on a forgotten road, you might catch the fleeting glimpse of a tiny porcelain hand, beckoning silently from the shadows. For more stories, like and subscribe.